1 year after humanity had walked away from the Galactic Council, the once mighty organization had become a shadow of its former self. The great chamber where thousands of species had once gathered to make decisions for the galaxy now held only a few dozen desperate representatives from worlds that had not yet collapsed completely. Speaker Velthar sat alone on his throne, his golden scales now completely gray with age and stress. The reports from across what had once been council space told a story of complete civilizational breakdown that he could barely comprehend. Entire sectors had gone dark as their communication networks failed. Star systems had declared independence rather than remain part of a dying organization. The morning briefing brought news that made his heart sink even lower. The Vorth homeworld of Scalaris had been evacuated completely as the atmospheric systems finally failed beyond repair. 3 billion Vorth now lived as refugees on colony worlds that struggled to support them. The Nexari crystal cities had gone permanently dark as their energy networks collapsed, leaving billions of beings in cold darkness. The Floran gas colonies were dying from the plague that human doctors had once held in check. The cure had died with the human researchers who had developed it. But the worst news came from the Outer Rim, where the Void Hunters had finally begun their long-predicted invasion. The ancient enemies of galactic civilization had watched and waited as the Council grew weak, and now they struck with devastating force. Admiral Kothrex brought the military reports that confirmed everyone's worst fears. Our remaining fleets are being destroyed system by system. The Void Hunters have ships and weapons we have never seen before. They seem to know exactly where our defenses are. Weakest Velthar studied the tactical displays showing red markers spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Each marker represented a world that had fallen to the void. Hunter advanced civilizations that had existed for millions of years, snuffed out in days. What about the human territories, he asked, hoping against hope that some miracle might save them. The Admiral looked uncomfortable. The Void Hunters have not attacked any human-controlled system, sir. In fact, their fleets seem to be avoiding human space entirely. Our intelligence reports suggest the humans have been preparing for this invasion for months on Luna Station orbiting Earth. Ambassador Li Wu-Jin sat in his office reading the flood of desperate messages from alien governments. The same beings who had called humans useful pets now begged for salvation, with words that would have been impossible for them to speak a year ago. The messages offered everything: full membership in a new galactic government leadership positions for humans, control of entire star systems, economic agreements that would make humanity the dominant species in the galaxy. But Li Wu-Jin knew the offers came too late. His assistant Dr. Han Sora brought him the latest intelligence reports about the Void Hunter invasion. The ancient enemy had chosen their timing perfectly, striking when the galaxy was weakest and most divided. They know exactly how to exploit the weaknesses in Council defenses, she said. Our analysis suggests they have been planning this invasion for decades, waiting for the right moment. Li Wu-Jin looked out the window at Earth's blue marble hanging in space. Behind him, the walls displayed images of human colonies across the galaxy, thriving worlds where humans had built new civilizations, free from alien prejudice and limitations. The irony was complete. The species that had dismissed humans as children had become completely dependent on human protection. The beings who had called humans too primitive to deserve respect now faced extinction without human help. President Kim Yan-su addressed the human worlds from Seoul, her voice carried by communication networks that functioned perfectly throughout human space. The aliens who once ruled us are learning the price of their arrogance. They chose to see us as servants rather than partners. Now they face the consequences of that choice. The human colonies had not merely survived their separation from galactic civilization. They had flourished beyond anything the aliens had thought possible. New Seoul was now one of the most advanced cities in the galaxy, with technology that made alien capitals look primitive. Terraforming projects that had been delayed for decades by council bureaucracy were completed in months. Human engineers worked without the artificial safety restrictions that aliens had imposed, creating marvels of engineering that transformed dead worlds into gardens. New Busan Captain Park Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of humanity's first dreadnought-class starship, the Sejong King. The massive vessel incorporated technologies that human scientists had developed in secret during their years of service to alien masters. The ship's weapons could destroy entire fleets. The shields could withstand attacks that would vaporize alien vessels. The engines could travel distances that would take alien ships months to cover. Admiral Choi Dae-ho reviewed the intelligence, reports about the Void Hunter invasion from his command center on Mars. The ancient enemy had expected to find the same weak divided galaxy they had faced before. Instead, they would encounter something new. Human fleets patrolled the borders of human space, turning away streams of alien refugees who sought shelter from the Void Hunter advance. The same species who had denied humans equal treatment now begged for protection. Some alien leaders offered to become human vassals, surrendering their independence in exchange for survival. Others promised to serve humanity with the same loyalty they had once demanded from humans. But Admiral Choi remembered the contempt in their voices when they had called humans useful pets. Dr. Ryu Seung-ho worked in his laboratory on Titan, developing the weapons systems that would define the new age of human dominance. His research had produced energy weapons that could crack planets, defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. The breakthrough had come when humans were freed from alien oversight and could pursue pure research without interference. Technologies that aliens had banned as too dangerous or too advanced were now routine tools in human hands. The final confrontation came when the Void Hunters reached the edge of human space, expecting to find the same weak primitives that the Council had dismissed. Their ancient ships encountered human patrol vessels that seemed impossibly advanced. Captain OG-1 commanded the lead human squadron that met the Void Hunter advance. Her medical frigate had been converted into a warship that carried weapons the galaxy had never seen. The same woman who had once saved alien lives now prepared to defend human independence. The battle was brief and decisive. Human weapons tore through Void Hunter defenses that had been considered impenetrable for millennia. The ancient enemy discovered that the galaxy had changed in ways they could not comprehend. Across human space, the news of victory spread through communication networks that had never failed. Children played in parks where Korean and English mixed with dozens of human languages. These children would grow up in a galaxy where humans were feared and respected rather than dismissed. The desperate aliens continued sending messages begging for human intervention against the Void Hunters. Some offered to become human protectorates. Others promised to adopt human government systems. A few even offered to abandon their homeworlds and serve as laborers on human colonies. Ambassador Li Woo-jin read each message carefully, then filed them away with the others. The time for bargaining had passed when the Council had chosen arrogance over wisdom. The final message came from Speaker Velthar himself, the proud Vorth leader who had once laughed at human ambitions. Now his words were humble and desperate, begging for forgiveness and aid. We were wrong. The message read, "We were blind. We were fools. Please save us. We will. Accept any terms, any conditions, just please help us survive, Lee." Woo-jin looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. The humans had their own worlds to protect and their own future to build. The galaxy would remember the day humanity walked away as the day a new age began. Some lessons could only be learned through loss. Some prices could only be paid in full. The Council had chosen to treat partners as servants, and now they faced the consequences of that choice. In the years that followed, historians would mark this as the moment when humanity stepped forward to claim their place as the dominant species in the galaxy. The beings who had once dismissed them as useful pets now spoke the word human with the reverence once reserved for ancient gods. The galaxy had learned too late that respect must be earned, not assumed, and that the word human now carried power that no alien species could match or challenge. The age of Council dominance was over, and the age of humanity had begun. 6 months after the humans had walked away from the Galactic Council, the great chamber that had once symbolized order and authority across the galaxy had become a scene of chaos and desperation. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted at each other in languages that their failing translation systems could barely handle. Speaker Velthar looked much older than his 3 centuries of age. His golden scales had dulled to a sickly yellow color, and his once powerful voice now cracked with strain. The reports flooding in from across council space painted a picture of civilization collapse that he could barely comprehend. The humans must be contacted immediately, he declared, slamming his clawed fist on the arm of his throne. Send ambassadors to every human world. Offer them full membership, equal voting rights, even leadership positions in a reformed council. The Nexari delegate who had once chimed with musical arrogance now produced harsh, discordant sounds that hurt the ears of nearby representatives. Our crystal cities are going dark without the energy systems humans designed. Half our population centers have been evacuated because we cannot maintain basic life support. Florin, military commander, floated in his containment suit, the gases inside swirling with patterns of barely controlled panic. Our defensive capabilities have dropped by 80%. The automated weapon systems that humans programmed are shutting down one by one. If the Void Hunters attack now, we have no way to protect our colonies. The reports continued pouring in, each one worse than the last. Entire star systems had declared independence from the Council, rather than face the ongoing collapse. Trade between sectors had dropped to almost nothing as the transportation networks that humans had maintained fell apart. Millions of aliens faced starvation as food distribution systems failed. On the Vorth homeworld of Scalaris, Governor Thexnel stood in his empty palace, breathing through a filtration mask as the atmosphere outside became more toxic each day. His advisors had fled to off-world colonies that still had breathable air, leaving him alone with the consequences of his species' arrogance. The environmental systems that had maintained their world for centuries were failing faster than they could be repaired. The Vorth engineers who tried to fix them lacked the deep understanding that human designers had possessed. Every attempt to restart the atmospheric processors resulted in explosions or toxic gas releases that made the problem worse. A messenger arrived with news that made Thexnel sink into his throne with despair. The oxygen production facilities in the northern continent had suffered a complete cascade failure. The poisonous gases released would make that entire region uninhabitable for decades. How many of our people can the evacuation ships carry? He asked, already knowing the answer would not be enough. Perhaps 10% of the population, sir, if we use every available vessel. The rest will have to find shelter in underground facilities, or hope the remaining life support systems hold long enough for repairs. Thexnel looked out at his dying world and wondered how his species had been so blind. They had ruled star systems for millions of years, but they had never learned to maintain the technology that kept them alive. They had been so focused on politics and power that they had forgotten the basics of survival. On the trading world of New Nexara, the economic collapse had reached its final stages. The banks that had financed galactic commerce for thousands of years were closing their doors as their assets became worthless. The currency systems that had enabled trade between different species were breaking down without the human economists who had maintained their stability. CEO Nextool stood in his empty office building looking down at streets that had once bustled with merchants and traders from across the galaxy. Now those same streets were filled with refugees trying to find passage off-world before the remaining transportation systems failed completely. His company, the Zerlin Consortium, had been one of the largest trading organizations in the galaxy. Just 6 months ago, they had employed millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Now they could barely afford to keep a single office open. The quantum communication array that had enabled instant contact across the galaxy flickered and died, leaving New Nexara cut off from the rest of galactic civilization. Nextel realized that his world had become an island in space, with no way to contact suppliers, customers, or even emergency services, on the research station orbiting Kepler 442. Dr. Velkren made a discovery that filled her with horror as she reviewed the human research files that had been left behind. The humans had not just been conducting experiments, they had been preventing disasters. Hidden in the data, she found records of hundreds of potential catastrophes that human scientists had quietly prevented or solved: volcanic eruptions that could have destroyed entire continents, asteroid impacts that would have wiped out civilizations, plague outbreaks that could have killed billions. The humans had been monitoring thousands of worlds for signs of natural disasters or biological threats. They had developed early warning systems and emergency response protocols that had saved countless lives without the aliens ever knowing they were in danger. Now those monitoring systems were offline. The early warning networks were silent. The emergency response teams had returned to human space, and the disasters that humans had been preventing were starting to happen. Dr. Velkron sent desperate messages to every human research facility she could locate, begging them to share information about pending threats. The automated responses she received were all the same. Human researchers are no longer available to provide consulting services to non-human entities. The military situation had become equally desperate as conflicts erupted across Council space species that had maintained peace for centuries, suddenly found themselves at war over resources and territory. The human peacekeeping forces that had mediated disputes and prevented escalation were gone. Admiral Zexthor of the Archnid Collective found his fleets locked in brutal combat with the gaseous confederation over mining rights in the Tau sector. Neither side could communicate effectively with the other, and neither understood why the conflict had escalated so quickly. The battle management systems that coordinated fleet movements had been designed by human strategists who understood the strengths and weaknesses of different species. Without that knowledge, both fleets were fighting blind, making tactical errors that cost thousands of lives. Even worse, the weapon systems themselves were failing as the maintenance protocols that humans had developed were forgotten or misunderstood. Starship weapons overheated and exploded. Defensive shields flickered and died. Navigation systems sent ships into asteroid fields or gravitational anomalies. The war spread to other sectors as old territorial disputes flared up without human diplomats to contain them. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was collapsing as species that had forgotten how to solve problems without human help turned to violence instead. On Earth, President Kim Yon-soo received daily reports about the chaos spreading across alien space. The intelligence networks that humans had built over decades of service continued to function, providing detailed information about the collapse of galactic civilization. Her advisors brought her desperate messages from alien governments begging for human assistance. Some offered enormous payments, others promised permanent positions of power. A few even offered to make humans the ruling species of entire star systems. The president read each message carefully, then filed them away without response. The time for negotiations had passed when the council had dismissed humanity as useful pets. The aliens had made their choice, and now they would live with the consequences. Admiral Choi Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching tactical displays that showed the complete breakdown of order in former council space. His human fleets patrolled the borders of human territory, turning away streams of alien refugees who sought shelter in human space. The refugees brought stories of worlds dying as life support systems failed, of entire species facing extinction as they proved unable to maintain the technology they had depended on for centuries, of governments collapsing as the administrative systems that humans had quietly maintained fell apart. Some of his officers asked if they should intervene to prevent humanitarian disasters, but Admiral Choi remembered the contempt in alien voices when they had dismissed human contributions as simple pet tricks. The galaxy was learning what happened when you treated partners as servants. Dr. Ryu Sung-ho worked in his new laboratory, on Mars, developing technologies that would benefit humanity alone. The research facilities around him hummed with activity, as human scientists who had once served alien masters now focused on purely human advancement, free from alien oversight and limitations. Human innovation was exploding. New technologies emerged weekly that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen. Terraforming techniques that could transform dead worlds in months instead of centuries. Starship designs that made alien vessels look primitive, medical advances that could extend human lifespans indefinitely. The humans were not just surviving their separation from galactic civilization, they were thriving in ways that had been impossible under alien rule. They had discovered what they could accomplish when they were no longer held back by species who saw them as useful servants rather than equal partners. 3 months had passed since the Great Exodus began, and the cracks in galactic civilization had become massive fractures that threatened to tear everything apart. The carefully maintained balance that had kept thousands of species working together was crumbling as fast as the systems humans had built to support it. On the Vorth homeworld of Scalaris, the atmospheric processors that had maintained breathable air for 2 billion inhabitants began shutting down one by one. The massive machines, hummed and wheezed as their complex systems failed, without the human engineers who had designed and maintained them for decades. Governor Thexnall stood in his palace, watching the red warning lights blink across his city below. The air already tasted different, carrying a metallic flavor that made his throat burn. His advisors brought him reports from across the planet showing similar failures everywhere. The humans had built environmental systems so advanced that the Vorth had forgotten their world was artificially maintained. Send another message to the human colonies, he ordered, his voice hoarse from breathing the corrupted air. Offer them whatever they want. Money, territory, voting rights in our planetary government. His communications officer looked uncomfortable. The humans are not responding to any of our transmissions, sir. They have blocked all contact from council member species. Governor Thexenol felt something he had never experienced before in his 3 centuries of life. Fear, not the quick fear of battle or danger, but the slow, crushing fear of watching everything he knew slowly die around him. The Vorth had ruled star systems for millions of years, but they had never learned to maintain the technology that kept their own people alive. On the trading world of New Nexara, the economic collapse was spreading like wildfire through the financial districts that had once been the beating heart of galactic commerce. CEO Nextool of the Zerlan Consortium stared at numbers that made no sense on his display screens. Shipping costs had increased by 800%. As alien crews struggled to navigate routes that human pilots had made look easy, cargo ships went missing in asteroid fields that humans had safely guided them through for decades. Simple deliveries that once took days now took weeks as alien navigators made mistake after mistake. The insurance companies were the first to collapse entirely. They could not afford to cover the massive losses. As ships full of valuable cargo disappeared into the void, or crashed into space hazards that human expertise had always helped them avoid, Nextel called an emergency meeting with his board of directors. The conference room filled with representatives from a dozen species, all looking as desperate as he felt. Trade volume has dropped by 75%, he announced. The humans controlled more of our logistics network than we ever realized. We cannot operate without them. A Flurin board member floated in her containment sphere, the gases inside swirling with patterns of distress. How did we not see this coming? Our own analysis departments told us. Humans were just useful servants doing simple tasks. Nextel pulled up holographic displays, showing the complexity of human-operated systems. They were not doing simple tasks. They were running everything. The shipping schedules, the route planning, the cargo optimization, the risk assessment. All of it. Everything. We thought our computers were doing was actually being managed by human specialists. The board meeting devolved into panic as each member shared similar stories from their own companies. Human accountants had been quietly preventing financial disasters. Human quality control specialists had been catching defects that would have caused massive recalls. Human customer service representatives had been maintaining relationships with clients across the galaxy on the research station orbiting Kepler 442. The galaxy's most advanced scientific projects ground to a halt as alien researchers realized they had been completely dependent on human expertise for decades. Dr. Velcran, the station's Nexari director, stood in her laboratory staring at experiments that no longer made sense. The human scientists had not just followed orders or performed simple tasks, they had been the creative force driving breakthrough discoveries. Their ability to see patterns and make connections between different fields of study had accelerated scientific progress by centuries. The medical research that had extended alien lifespans, the agricultural techniques that had ended famine, the energy technologies that powered entire star systems. All of it had come from human minds working in partnership with alien resources. Dr. Velcran tried to continue the experiments her human colleagues had been running, but without their insights and creativity, the work became impossible. She could follow procedures, but she could not innovate or solve problems when things went wrong. The communication networks that connected the galaxy began failing in cascade failures that spread from system to system. Human technicians had designed redundant systems with backup protocols that could handle almost any emergency, but the aliens who tried to maintain them did not understand the underlying principles. Simple software updates that humans had performed routinely caused massive system crashes when aliens attempted them. The quantum entanglement networks that enabled faster-than-light communication required constant fine-tuning that only human specialists understood. Entire sectors of the galaxy found themselves cut off from the rest of galactic civilization as their communication arrays went dark. Local governments could not coordinate with neighboring systems. Trade became impossible when merchants could not communicate with their suppliers or customers. The military implications became clear when border disputes that had been dormant for centuries suddenly flared into open warfare. The Arachnid Collective and the Gaseous Confederation had maintained an uneasy peace for decades thanks to human peacekeeping forces who understood both species well, enough to mediate their conflicts. Without human diplomats to translate not just languages but cultural concepts and emotional contexts, the two species quickly escalated minor trade disagreements into military confrontations. Their fleets clashed, in battles that accomplished nothing but demonstrated how much they had depended on human leadership to prevent such disasters. Admiral Zexathor of the Arachnid fleet found himself facing an enemy he could barely communicate with the translation. Devices worked for basic words, but the subtle meanings and diplomatic protocols that prevented misunderstandings had been developed and maintained by human specialists. The war spread to other systems as old grudges and territorial disputes erupted, without human peacekeepers to contain them. Species that had coexisted peacefully for generations suddenly remembered ancient grievances and began fighting over resources and territory. On the industrial world of Titan Prime, the manufacturing facilities that produced everything from starships to household goods stood silent and empty. The alien supervisors tried desperately to restart production, but the automated systems required constant human oversight to function properly. The robots and assembly lines had been designed by human engineers who understood both the technical requirements and the practical challenges of large-scale manufacturing. Without their knowledge, the sophisticated systems became useless collections of expensive machinery. Factory manager Kolvez watched his production numbers drop to zero, as every attempt to restart the assembly lines resulted in expensive failures. The humans had made it look easy, but they had been solving hundreds of complex problems every day. Problems that the aliens had never even noticed. The ripple effects reached into every aspect of daily life across the galaxy. Public transportation systems failed as the scheduling and routing algorithms that humans had developed broke down under conditions. Their creators were no longer there to handle food distribution networks collapsed as the complex logistics that moved agricultural products from farming worlds to urban centers fell apart without human coordination. Billions of alien citizens faced shortages of basic necessities for the first time in their lives. The entertainment industry had completely collapsed, leaving alien populations with nothing but old recordings and programs. Humans had somehow understood what made different. Species laugh, cry, or feel excited in ways that alien entertainers had never managed. Even simple things like weather prediction became unreliable, as the atmospheric modeling systems that humans had developed failed without constant updates and adjustments. Alien farmers found themselves unable to plan their planting and harvesting schedules. The galactic economy was not just struggling, it was dying. The complex web of interdependencies that had made modern civilization possible was unraveling, thread by thread as each human maintained system failed. The news traveled faster than light itself through the quantum communication network that humans had built and maintained. For the past 2 decades, President Kim Yon-soo sat in her office in Seoul watching the feeds from human colonies across the galaxy. Her advisors filled the room, their faces showing a mix of fear and determination. On the giant holographic display, thousands of human settlements glowed like stars against the dark void of space. Each point of light represented families who had built new lives far from Earth, working alongside alien species they had believed were friends. The president knew that within hours every human in the galaxy would know about the Council's final insult. Admiral Choi Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship the Seoul watching tactical displays that showed human military assets scattered across 47 star systems. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his officers could see the fire burning in his dark eyes. He had served in the Council fleet for 30 years watching human crews do the most dangerous jobs while alien commanders took the credit. Begin Operation Homecoming. He ordered, his voice steady and calm. Recall all human personnel from Council space. Every ship, every station, every outpost. Nothing stays behind. The order went out on encrypted channels that only human forces could access. Within minutes, human commanders throughout the galaxy began powering up their ships and preparing for departure. The largest military withdrawal in galactic history had begun. Dr. Jinhai 1 looked out the observation deck of her research station, orbiting the Nexari homeworld. Below her, the crystal planet sparkled with cities that reached toward the stars. Her team of 200 human scientists had spent 15 years developing the breakthrough technologies that made modern hyperspace travel possible. The Nexari had never bothered to learn how the systems worked. They simply enjoyed the benefits while treating the humans like clever servants. Dr. Jin gathered her research team in the main laboratory, where holographic displays showed decades of their work pack, everything she told them. Take every file, every prototype, every piece of data we have developed. The aliens think they own our discoveries, but they never understood how any of it actually works. Her assistant researcher, Dr. Park Sung-min, looked worried about the alien scientists they worked with. What about our Nexari colleagues? They depend on our research to keep their own projects running. That is no longer our concern, Dr. Jin replied. They made their choice when they supported the council decision. Now they can learn to do the work themselves or watch their projects fail. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds. Human doctors packed up medical equipment that had revolutionized alien healthcare. Human engineers shut down the fusion reactors and atmospheric processors that kept entire colonies alive. Human farmers prepared to abandon the agricultural centers that fed billions of alien citizens. On the farming world of New Jeju Colony, Administrator Bae Young-sik walked through the vast greenhouse complexes that covered half the planet. The hybrid crops growing in perfect rows represented 20 years of careful development. Each plant was designed to grow in alien soil and provide nutrition for dozens of different species. The local Vorth governor had sent angry messages demanding that the humans continue their work. The crops would die without constant human care, and 12 different alien species depended on the food production. The governor offered better pay, better living conditions, even a small voice in local government. Bae looked at the messages and deleted them without responding. The time for bargaining had passed. The aliens had made their position clear, and now they would live with the consequences. He activated the colony-wide evacuation protocol and watched as human families began loading their possessions onto transport ships. Captain OG-1 piloted her medical frigate away from the plague-stricken Fluran colonies, where she had spent 3 years fighting a deadly virus that threatened to wipe out their entire species. Her ship carried the only known cure along with the research data needed to produce more. The Fluran leaders had begged her to stay, offering massive payments and even a permanent research facility. But Captain O remembered how those same leaders had laughed at the council session when humans were dismissed as useful pets. The virus had killed 6 million Flurans so far and would kill millions more without human medical intervention. The disease will run its course, she told her medical team as they jumped to hyperspace. Either they will develop immunity or they will not. That is no longer our responsibility. The exodus created immediate chaos throughout council space. The communication networks that humans had designed and maintained began failing within hours. Alien technicians tried desperately to keep the systems running, but they lacked the deep understanding needed to fix complex problems. On the industrial world of Gamma Centauri factory manager Shin Yun, she supervised the shutdown of the largest starship manufacturing facility in the galaxy. The massive assembly lines fell silent as human workers and engineers prepared to leave. The alien owners of the factory screamed threats and offers, but Shin ignored them all. "You cannot run this facility without us," she told the Zerlon plant supervisor. "The automated systems require constant adjustment and maintenance that only humans understand. You focused on profits while we focused on actually making things work." The Zerlon supervisor, a mantis-like creature with compound eyes, tried to block the human workers from leaving. Claiming they were violating their contracts, Shin showed him the legal documents that proved all human contracts were void the moment the council rejected their request for equal treatment. The ripple effects spread through every aspect of galactic civilization. The entertainment industry collapsed as human artists, musicians, and storytellers returned to human space. Alien audiences had grown addicted to human creativity, finding it more engaging than anything their own species produced. Restaurants across the galaxy closed as human chefs departed. The fusion cuisine that combined flavors from dozens of worlds had become the standard for fine dining. Alien palates had grown dependent on the complex tastes that human creativity had developed. Even the council chambers themselves began experiencing problems. Human technicians had quietly maintained the translation systems, environmental controls, and communication networks that kept the massive bureaucracy functioning. Without them, simple meetings between different species became difficult and time-consuming. Dr. An Tai-kyung, the galaxy's leading expert on cross-species biology, packed up his laboratory on the council homeworld. His research had made modern galactic civilization possible, allowing different species to live and work together safely. His ongoing studies prevented new diseases and biological incompatibilities from emerging. The Council Medical Board sent desperate messages offering him unlimited funding and complete research freedom. But Dr. An remembered how they had dismissed human contributions as simple tricks and amusing pet behaviors. He sealed his research data and prepared to transfer everything to human-controlled facilities. The most shocking departures came from positions the aliens had never realized humans held. Human administrators quietly kept massive bureaucracies running. Human translators enabled communication between species with completely different languages and thought patterns. Human logistics coordinators managed the incredibly complex web of interstellar trade and transportation trade routes that had functioned smoothly for decades suddenly dissolved into chaos. Human navigators had plotted the safest paths through asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies. Without them, alien ships faced dangerous journeys through space that no longer seemed familiar or safe. The Zerlon Consortium, one of the galaxy's largest trading companies, watched their profits vanish overnight. CEO Nextool stared at reports showing delivery times increased by 400% and shipping costs doubled. Human efficiency had kept their business model profitable. But now reality was setting in. Within 1 week, the first rolling blackouts hit major alien worlds. The power plants humans had designed could not be operated by species who had never bothered learning how they actually worked. The aliens had been content to enjoy the benefits while treating the creators as servants. President Kim Yeon-soo addressed the human worlds from her office in Seoul. Behind her, the lights of Earth's cities twinkled in the darkness. We offered partnership and received contempt. We offered our knowledge and received insults. Now they will learn what the galaxy looks like without human hands keeping it running. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive arena, filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Li Wu-jin walked slowly across the polished floor, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes watching his every step. His black suit looked simple compared to the flowing robes and glittering armor worn by the other delegates, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. Behind him walked Dr. Han, So-Ra clutching her data tablet tightly. Her heart pounded as she looked. Up at the towering seats where the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat waiting to judge humanity. The Vorth delegates looked down at them with golden eyes full of contempt. Their scaled faces showed no warmth at all. The third human Park, Min Ho, kept his military uniform perfectly pressed. Despite the long journey to reach this place, he had served on 17 different alien worlds, protecting colonies and trade routes. His right hand bore scars from the Battle of Kepler 7, where he had saved an entire Nexari settlement from raiders. Speaker Velthar rose from his throne at the center of the chamber. His massive form cast shadows across the floor as light reflected off his golden scales. He had ruled the council for over 3 centuries, and his voice carried the authority of countless conquered worlds. When he spoke, the translation devices built into every seat hummed to life. Your request has been heard, humans, but the council finds it lacking in wisdom. You ask for voting rights as if you were equals to races that have sailed between stars since before your species learned to make fire. Li Wu-jin stepped forward and placed his hands behind his back in a gesture of respect that humans had been taught to show alien leaders. We have served faithfully for 43 years. Our doctors have cured plagues on 67 worlds. Our engineers built the hyperspace network that connects your territories. Our farmers feed billions of your people. A Nexari delegate whose crystal body rang like wind chimes when she moved forward to speak. Tools serve their purpose human, but they do not demand seats at the table of their betters. You speak of service as if it makes you special, but service is what lesser beings do. For greater ones, Dr. Hanso-Ra felt anger rise in her chest, but kept her voice calm and professional. Our medical research has extended the average lifespan of council species by 30%. Our agricultural techniques have ended famine on 12 major worlds. Our peacekeeping forces have prevented 14 wars that would have cost millions of lives. The Fluran representative floated in his containment sphere, the gases inside swirling in patterns that showed his amusement. Humans are useful. Pets, we grant you this. Your tricks with plants and medicine amuse us, but useful pets do not sit with their masters when important decisions are made. Park. Minho thought of his younger brother who had died defending a Vorth colony from space pirates. The medal they gave him afterward sat in a box at home gathering dust. His brother had believed they were fighting for something important, for a future where humans would be respected. Partners in the galaxy. More alien voices joined the conversation, each one more dismissive than the last. The spider-like arachnids clicked their approval as their speaker declared that humans were too emotional and unstable for real responsibility. The cloud-dwelling gassers pulsed with colors that meant deep amusement at human ambition. You have grown too bold, little humans, said another Vorth delegate. His scales darker than the speaker's. Return to your small corner of space and be grateful we allow you to exist at all. Some among us believe you reproduce too quickly and take up too much room. Wu Jin looked around the chamber slowly, taking in every face, every gesture, every sign of the contempt these beings felt for his species. 43 years ago, the first human ships had reached Council. Space and humanity had been eager to join this great galactic community. They had offered everything. They had their knowledge, their labor, their lives. In those early years, humans had been grateful for any chance to prove themselves. They had taken the dangerous jobs, the ones that paid little and asked for nothing in return. They had cleaned up toxic waste on dead worlds. They had ventured into space storms to repair communication satellites. They had volunteered for medical experiments to help develop treatments for alien diseases. Dr. Hanso-Ra remembered her grandmother, who had been part of the first wave of human scientists to work with alien researchers. Her grandmother had spent 20 years developing atmospheric processors that made dead worlds livable again. She had worked 18-hour days for barely enough pay to survive and had been grateful for the opportunity. The Nexari delegate chimed again, drawing attention back to herself. We have been generous with humans, allowing them to serve us in many ways. But generosity has limits. Your kind has begun to expect rewards beyond what you deserve. This ends now, Park. Minho felt his jaw clench as he remembered the human soldiers under his command who had given their lives protecting alien civilians. They had died believing they were defending innocent people who would remember their sacrifice. Instead, their deaths had been recorded as acceptable losses in reports filed by alien commanders who never bothered to learn their names. Speaker Velthar raised one massive clawed hand for silence. The matter is decided. Humans will continue to serve as they have always served. You will be grateful for the honor of serving your betters. You will not ask for things beyond your station again. The chamber fell completely quiet. Even the soft hum of the environmental system seemed to pause. Li Wu-Jin reached into his jacket and pulled out the ceremonial staff that marked him as an official council representative. It was made of crystallized stardust and had been given to the first human ambassador decades ago. He held the staff up so everyone in the chamber could see it clearly, then brought it down hard across his knee. The crack as it broke echoed through the vast space like thunder. The two pieces fell to the floor with a sound that seemed to go on forever. Then we formally withdraw from all council agreements effective immediately. Li Wu-Jin said, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber. The silence that followed was deeper than the void between stars. No species had ever voluntarily left the council in over 1 million years. The very idea was unthinkable. Speaker Velthar leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing to slits. You cannot survive without us, human. Your species is weak, your technology is primitive, you will come crawling back within a year begging for forgiveness. Li. Wu Jin picked up the broken pieces of his staff and tucked them into his jacket. We shall see. About that, he said. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoing in the stunned silence, Dr. Han-So Ra and Park Min-ho followed him, their own ceremonial items left behind on the chamber floor. As they reached the great doors, Wu Jin paused and looked back one final time at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. You had a chance to gain true partners today. Instead, you chose to keep servants. That choice will cost you more than you can imagine. The three humans walked out of the chamber, leaving behind 43 years of service, sacrifice, and hope. The great doors closed behind them with a sound like the ending of an age.